Welcome aboard Just Jets with your captain, Matt O'Leary. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
Hello and welcome to episode number 16 of Just Jets. What's going on? I am Matt O'Leary hanging out with you. We have a few different things to get to today, but before we get started, I just wanted to mention that you can follow along with me on social media at Matt O'Leary NY. Really appreciate you being here, hanging out, talking football with me. I love doing these podcasts, man. It's easier. In some ways, harder in others, but from actually just doing the content, it's easier. Editing, it's a little bit harder, ironically, because there's not as many cuts, but it's just long, but I like doing it. It's worth it. It's like my therapy. It's therapeutic to me. So you guys deal with my ramblings, I guess, and we're just going to talk some New York Jets football. We have an interview today. We were talking with Ali from Loyal NY Jet Fans on Instagram. Make sure to follow him, and we're going to get into that interview in a little bit. But what I wanted to start with is, rant might be a strong word, but I put out a couple of videos in the last few days. One is titled, Why Adam Gase is a Terrible Play Caller. The other is, Who's Better, Sam Darnold or Daniel Jones? And the first one with Adam Gase, I went through 3 specific points, used data, facts to back it up. It's not just me spouting off. I'm talking about why running on second and long doesn't make sense. And the Jets do it 52% of the time, by far the most in the league. And I pointed out just a few things that I didn't like with Adam Gase calling plays. On top of that, I did a video on Saturday, and it was the Daniel Jones versus Sam Darnold. And essentially, I was trying to find out who was better, and I came to the conclusion that I find Sam Darnold, Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, and Baker Mayfield all very, very close. I grouped them all just about together. So I said they're the same, essentially, at this point. Now, to clarify, traits-wise, I like Darnold's traits better. But that's not what I was doing. I was trying to find out who is better right now in this moment. And there's no answer because they have essentially done the same. Their numbers are very, very close. Very close. And it's hard to argue circumstances and stuff like that. But something that I don't like is when my Jets fandom is questioned. And I'm not saying that I am the most knowledgeable fan there is. That's ridiculous. I know that there are a lot more knowledgeable fans than myself. I only like doing this, or the reason why I do this is because I like it. That's what I mean. I don't think that my opinion is better than anyone else's. I like to make videos. I like to do audio content. That's just what I do. Peek behind the curtain. My day job is I work at and I run a college radio station. This is what I like to do. This is a hobby for me. Maybe one day it become a full-time job. I hope I get to that point. That'd be phenomenal. I love talk radio, and, I would love to do just like Jets content. And I thought there was a place on YouTube when I've been doing this over the, a little over a year full, Jet stuff. And my thought was that there's an opportunity for someone to do strictly Jets things, or for people to do more just like Jets-centric conversation. Because when you tune into like, ESPN Radio 98.7 or WFAN, it's all the New York sports. But on a YouTube channel or on a podcast, you can go more in depth on just one team, and you can make it, team centric, which is what we did, or what this is it. This is, Just Jets content. Just Jets. Literally, it's in the title. How ironic. But I take offense. I think that's a good way to say it. I take offense to my fandom being in question when I am being critical of the team. Because I don't like the head coach, or because I said that the Jets quarterback is about on par for another quarterback in this league right now who's young in the league, that doesn't mean that I'm not a fan. Okay? I am critical of certain things. because I expect better of the team that I root for, and I am happy about other things because they prove me right or because I notice it and it's good. For example, them drafting Sam Darnold, great idea. Was I a fan of Mike McCagnon? No, because he put the Jets in cap hell and his drafting was poor in a lot of areas, but I can appreciate him landing Sam Darnold. Yes, I am happy about Sam Darnold long term. I also, when I look at this team, I don't understand how they went through the interview process and saw what Gase did in Miami and decided that it was worthwhile to hire him. And just because at the time I didn't think it was a good idea, or looking at it at an unbiased lens, I think is a better way to explain it, which is what I try to do here. And in just life in general, I try to take bias out of a lot of things, but I wasn't a fan of Adam Gase before he was hired by the Jets. Like that year after the 2018 season, I looked at all the head coaching candidates, and Gase was very far down on the list. Probably bottom of the list because I didn't think he did a good job in Miami. When he was their head coach, I wasn't particularly fond of him. And just because he became my head coach, that doesn't mean that I'm going to change my opinion on him. There's no reason to. I'm not just going to say, oh, well, now I got to defend the guy. I got to think he's great. That's not how it works. You have to look at statistics. You have to look at the facts. And you have to stick true to what you believe. You can't just be like, oh, well, Gase is my coach. I got to love him. And if I don't love him, then I'm not a fan. It's not how it works. And I think there are people who are too critical. At the same time, there's a lot of more people who are a lot more critical than I am. Do you ever read the comments on these videos? There's a lot of people who bash and hate on every single thing. I think if you think I'm too critical, I'll give you a ton of stuff that I'm positive about on this team with. Their general manager. I think they have a really good general manager here in Joe Douglas. I'm excited and I'm happy that he is leading this organization. I am confident that Sam Darnold is a franchise quarterback. I think he is going to be very good in this league. Has he done that yet necessarily? I think he took a step forward from his rookie year to his sophomore year. I'd like to see him play a full 16-game season so we can really see those numbers come to fruition. But I think he's shown you enough to say that he is a franchise quarterback, and I'm excited about having him on the team. Excited about Chris Herndon coming back. I think he is a tight end who could push 700 yards plus this year. I think he could be the Jets' best tight end since Dustin Keller. When you look at the wide receiver position, I'm really excited about the Denzel Mims pick. I think that's someone who could have been someone who could have went 20 to 25 in the draft. I don't know how he got out of the first round. I don't know how he fell to 48 and then to 59. I'm extremely excited about that. On the defensive side of the ball, you have Jamal Adams, who is just an absolute lightning rod. I like having him on the team. I think he's good. He's fun to watch. Just because I say that maybe it's not a good idea to pay him $20 million a year due to cap reasons, that doesn't mean I'm not a fan. Or that doesn't mean I don't like the guy. That's all I'm saying. Don't be a sheep. Just don't say like, oh, whatever this team does, I will support it 100%. Because how can you? When you've been this bad for this long, how can you? The last time they made the playoffs was 2010. I was 15 years old when that happened. I'm 25 years old now. I graduated high school. I graduated college. I got my first job. So much of my life has changed since the last time the Jets were good and made the playoffs. I can't sit here and see everything that I did for the last decade and be like, oh, that's just the Jets. I'm going to support every single decision they make because they know what they're doing. Well, I don't think that's the case. I think if they knew what they were doing, they'd be in a position to win more. And you get the benefit of the doubt when you're a winning organization, or you get the benefit of the doubt when you put multiple good years together. Jets have had one winning season since 2010, and that was in 2015. They went 10-6, and it was a really fun year. They did a lot of things well that first year under Todd Bowles and Mike McCagnon. and it was fun. But since then, hasn't been fun. 16 wasn't good. 17 was the tank year. 18, Darnold's rookie year. There was some, exciting factors because you had, the rookie quarterback, and he flashed, but then he missed 3 games in the middle of the year. That sucked. This past year, they went 7-9. Okay. They went 6-2 in the last 8 games of the year. That's a good thing, except for when you look at the Jets had the 31st ranked offense in the league. They had a top 10 defense, which I'm extremely excited about. I think that unit could be really, really good again this year. I do. Just because I don't trust the guy who's running the offense doesn't mean that I'm not a fan of the team. I don't know how I can make it any more clear. But that was just something that bothered me a little bit, so I wanted to get it out there. And that's, I guess this is my avenue to do that. So I'm going to do it. That was my little rant, I guess, to start the show. I don't know. Call it whatever you want. But let's get to the interview with Ali. We talk a lot about a bunch of different things with Ali. We talk about what we thought of Joe Douglas and if there's anyone left that is worthwhile for the Jets to sign. So let's get into it. All right, now we are going to welcome on Ali from Loyal NY Jet Fans. Ali, how you doing today?
I'm good, Matt. How are you?
Doing pretty good. I wanted to start with getting your take on this whole Jamal Adams saga, all the drama that's going on. What do you think of all this?
I think this drama is going to last forever until he gets his extension. I think with the New York media and how big Jamal Adams is as a player, I think it's going to last a long, long time. But with Ian Rappaport pretty much saying with the Cowboys have no real interest. So that pretty much takes out anyone really in the running who is rumored, because the Cowboys are probably the best spot for Jamal Adams if he were to get traded. But there's no real interest there because obviously Cowboys have to pay Dak Prescott. So Jamal Adams is wanting a very big extension. The Jets obviously want him, but they're not rushing it because they have him under contract until next year. So there's no reason to rush it. And obviously Jamal Adams wants it, but a lot of people are waiting on contract extensions. There's a lot of obstacles with the COVID-19 stuff. Right. Every team is facing it. So he just gotta wait. But the one thing I wanted to touch upon is Jamal Adams hasn't really said much on social media.
Right.
Usually he expresses his opinions or says something about what's going on, about his contract or whatever it is. And he hasn't said much, which is kind of surprising for me. I don't know about you, but it's kind of surprising. I thought he would be saying a lot of stuff like he did a couple months ago. But, I think there should be an understanding, and maybe his agent just told him to shut up. But we'll see how long this lasts. But I think this is going to last until he gets his extension, and you're going to keep hearing this over and over.
Right. Yeah. A couple things. One, I'm with you. To me, the Dallas never really made a whole lot of sense outside that's where he's from, and that yes, they'd like to improve the safety position. But when you look at their cap situation, how are they going to be able to afford paying Jamal Adams what he wants and bring back Dak Prescott and everything else they have to do? They're such an offensive-heavy team. I feel like that they would want to allocate, especially, paying Dak Prescott and then going from there, allocate as many resources as possible onto that offensive side of the ball. And to me, that's what never made sense why the Cowboys were in play. Are you kind of in the same boat with that?
Yeah, with the Cowboys, it's just I feel like the fans, the beat reporters took advantage of the headline, and with no headlines going on right now, they pretty much said, because Jamal Adams pretty much said he could want to go back home. So people are like, oh, Dallas Cowboys might be an option for him. Right. So that's what their thing is, that they're like, oh, he's from Dallas, so he'll go to Dallas and play in Dallas. No. When in week 5, when we finally won against the Dallas Cowboys, we got our first win. You know how happy he was? He was on Instagram Live saying oh, he's getting a bar ring. He's like, I got the first one against Dallas, Cowboys. He doesn't really care. He just wants his money and he wants to play. He just wants to play football. I don't care. He's from Dallas. He probably wants to go home, be with his family and all that stuff, but he likes New York. and the Jets want to keep him. So they're not rushing in unless, they drop like a first-round pick and a couple more picks, which I think Dallas is never going to do. But I think this is a non-story as of now.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And something else, too, you kept mentioning is the Jets being patient with it. They really have all the leverage here, and there's no reason to rush into this. They have him under contract for this year and next year, even when they got the fifth-year option done. So to me, it makes no sense to re-sign him now. It's just Jamal wanting to get paid, no?
Yeah, I think it's Jamal just wanting to get paid and just have, he knows. Because everyone's right now, I get it in the way, because everyone's concerned about what's going on in this world. And I feel like it's kind of getting to his head, too, because, he's not going out and, there's no camp, there's no nothing. Right now, we have no idea what's going on. We don't even know if the season's going to start on the correct time. So I think both sides need to just understand that Joe Douglas is looking at, is there going to be an actual season this year? So they're trying to look at financially how they're going to be looking. And then also, like, Jamal Adams wants to get some money and I'm going to be here for a couple of years. So, like, I get from both ends, but Jets have the leverage right here. Jamal Adams has no leverage, and maybe that's why he's not saying anything on social media yet.
Right, that makes a ton of sense. Switching gears a little bit, I wanted to talk with you about free agency. So the Jets were pretty active, but I wanted to ask you if there was anybody left that piques your interest or any position you think the Jets should be looking to improve before the season gets underway.
To be honest, I feel like the Jets are pretty much done in free agency. But if there's any guy, maybe Larry Warford or Logan Ryan, I guess. But those two guys, I think Logan Ryan might go somewhere else. I think he just wants a lot of money, and I don't think the way Joe Douglas has approached the offseason, I don't think he's going to pay him a lot. And then same thing with Warford. I think he would be if we cut Winters, Warford would be a great signing with like maybe, $7 million a year?
Right.
Is that around that area? So that would be a good signing, but I think that's the only thing I can see.
Yeah, I mean, if you cut Brian, or if the Jets were to cut Brian Winters, they save it's a little over $7 million against the cap. And to me, it seems like a no-brainer to part ways with a guy like Brian Winters, who, is banged up the last couple of years, and get somebody who's a 3-time Pro Bowler and, really beef up that offensive line.
Yeah, Joe Douglas pretty much focused on the offensive line. It's completely improved from, what we saw last season. So I wouldn't be surprised if they brought another offensive lineman in.
Absolutely. Now, I wanted to ask you about one position in particular before we move on to more on Joe Douglas. But when you look at the Jets wide receiver position, do you think there's enough there as of right now, or do you think they're going to have to look to add another body in here?
I think they have to put another body in, but this group is really interesting. I feel like it's either a boom or bust at the wide receiver. Like with Rashad Perryman, he can play, he can ball out, but he really hasn't had that, what do you call it, like a great season yet. But he also had injuries, he didn't have a good quarterback or whatever it was. And maybe he gets a new fresh start with Sam Darnold. Denzel Mims is also, we got to figure out a lot about him as well. We want him to be the number one wide receiver, but is he the number one wide receiver? We have no idea right now.
Right.
So I think the group is good with Crowder coming back. Hopefully the Herndon is healthy all season. Herndon is a really big asset for Sam Darnold. And I think the wide receiver is all right, the receiving core as a whole. But I think they just maybe bring it back to Demaryius Thomas for a year. I can see that happening because he's just another body, and he wasn't as bad as I thought he would be.
Right.
I think he had 400 yards, 500 yards last season. So I think it's okay, but we'll just have to see how everyone pans out. If Perriman can stay healthy, how Denzel Mims plays as a rookie. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Absolutely. And there's been a lot of turnover in Joe Douglas's first year as, the general manager getting an off-season underway now, a full one with a draft and free agency and stuff like that. What are your overall thoughts on both what he was able to do in free agency and then the NFL draft?
Let's first talk about the free agency part of it. I think it was pretty damn good. The 1-year contract was kind of interesting to me. but it was a different approach than we've had in the last couple of years. We didn't hit the home runs with the signing. We didn't overpay guys. I don't think he wanted a situation of like a Tremaine Johnson situation where he gets overpaid and he just sucks. Like there's no other way. Like, so I think he wanted just to build a team first and see, like just put a team out there that can play and have high potential. So like his number one priority, he said that was protecting Sam Darnold. So that's exactly what he did. The Jets finally focused on the offensive line like properly. So they brought in guys like Greg Van Roen, George Fan. They re-signed Alex Lewis, Connor McGovern. These guys are all pretty good. Even on a one-year contract besides Greg, it could be interesting to see how it all pans out. And then you also bring back guys like Brian Poole, Jordan Jenkins, Neville Hewitt, who all played great.
Right.
And with Jordan Jenkins, actually, it was really interesting how Jenkins was actually shopping out in other places, and Douglas gave him an offer, and he wasn't budging from that, and Jenkins just came back to us. So, that's how GMing works. You have to have the value for that one player, and he'll just come back to you. It's perfect how he handled the free agency market, and he didn't overpay. It was kind of interesting to see, like, how we didn't overpay any players. I'm used to like having the big signing of the New York Jets. Maybe that's a different approach that we need to be a successful team.
Were you surprised that he was so, so much sticking to his guns in like the Robbie Anderson negotiations that he wasn't really willing to budge too much?
I think for Robbie, I think they like Robbie, but I think he wanted to be out of New York.
Okay.
I think I've done 2 events with him, and I think you probably saw he retweeted me on Twitter and stuff, and I got backlash from a lot of that.
Yes.
But I think he wanted to be out. I think he wanted to try something new, and Carolina was a perfect fit for him. I called it maybe a couple of months ago before it, and I wrote an article about that. It makes too much sense for him to go somewhere else, and for us to move on. And hopefully Denzel Mims could be even better than Robbie. And that's maybe what his thought process was, but he was never wanting to overpay Robbie, because he still hasn't had that 1,000 yard season, right?
Correct.
So it doesn't make sense to overpay someone, especially he was taking advantage of also a wide receiver market in free agency that didn't have much depth at wide receiver. So he was going to get the load no matter what. After like Amari Cooper got signed and all that stuff, he was the best wide receiver available. So it's sad that he left, but I think it makes sense. I think he handled it pretty well.
Now, how about for the draft? Were you surprised with how active he was with trades and some of the decisions that he made on draft weekend?
I was kind of surprised about just one pick, the quarterback pick.
I'm with you.
I thought it was way too early, in my opinion. We don't know how it's going to pan out, but I think it was way too early to get a quarterback when we could have grabbed maybe another wide receiver that we need. I hope. There was rumors that either the Patriots and Bills wanted him, or like the Dolphins, I believe, and maybe he just wanted to grab them so they don't draft him. Like he is a good quarterback. He has a good arm. He has great size, but it just didn't make sense with Darnold as the number 1 right now in round 4 going for another quarterback. It just didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. With how the board was breaking, I definitely would have looked to add a wide receiver or maybe double down and trying to get another edge rusher or corner in that spot. With, if you look at the Jets' needs, I think you could have addressed backup quarterback in free agency, which they ended up doing, and we'll get to in a second. But I would have looked to address another position of need in that spot, I think. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think we either should have gone wide receiver or a cornerback. But I feel like when we drafted Bryce Hall, that was a very, very good deal. Yep. I think that was getting around like Bryce Hall. I feel like he could have been a day 2 or even day 1 if he didn't get hurt a lot. I think he has a lot of talent, and he could be a starter couple of years. He still has a lot of work to do. But I think from the entire draft, I think Douglas nailed it overall. I think he looked at the best guys, and he looked at building a team more than just building like just a talent. Like with leadership.
Right.
I think all the picks were like known as leaders on their team. So that tells you that he wants young guys to come in and be a leader and have successful years to come, not just next year that we have a good season. So I think he's trying to build from scratch and getting guys that have potential, low risk, high reward type stuff. I think Douglas had a really good offseason as a whole.
Now, after the draft and most recently, the Jets added Joe Flacco to their quarterback room. It came out this week that he probably won't be ready for the season opener. Does that concern you at all?
Not really. I think he was able to. I think a timetable of maybe late September he'll be fine and be back. But I just want him around Sam Darnold. I think that's the biggest thing is that Flacco has been successful. He's been to the Super Bowl, and he knows how everything works around the league. So he'll be able to mentor Sam. That's what I feel like he's brought in to do. And he's a solid QB2 when he's ready to play. So I think after last season, what happened with Sam Darnold and how we had Luke Falcon, I was not comfortable with any of those guys.
Right.
This year is a little bit different. I think Douglas wanted to bring a guy that he also knew about. He was part of that in Baltimore. So I think it's really good that we got Flacco, and it's not really concerning because I don't think we're not going to need Flacco until Sam gets hurt, and hopefully he doesn't get hurt this year and miss games. But I don't think it doesn't really bother me. Sam Darnold is a QB1. It would be a different situation if Flacco was going to be the QB1.
Right.
But Sam's QB1, I think will be fine. Just hopefully he'll be healthy and able to mentor Sam.
Yeah, and with David Fales' contract being, as cheap as what it is, you could kind of just keep him around to be QB2 as Morgan kind of develops, and then once Flacco's ready to go, you can kind of just move on from Fales. I would assume that's the plan here, right?
Yeah, most likely. I think they're just going to keep him on there, through training camp, through preseason, and just see how Flacco is doing. And if Flacco's 100%, I think you can see a release.
Yeah, absolutely. So where can people find you on social media and see your stuff, Ali?
So it's Loyal NY Jet Fans on Instagram and on Twitter, and then officialloyalnetwork.com. I have all the articles on there. I have all my interviews that I do with athletes, all my events that I do. And hopefully we go back to normal and start doing more events.
Absolutely. Well, I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on with me. It's always fun catching up with you, and hope you and your family are safe during these times.
You too, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much to Ali for coming on. Love catching up with him. Has a lot of really good insight. So if you aren't already, please make sure to follow him. And now we're going to get into the questions for this week. First one comes from Brandon in New York City. Wants to talk a little bit about Larry Warford and some other free agents.
Hey Matt, what's going on? This is Brandon from New York City. I just wanted to talk to you about possibly getting Larry Warford. It would really upgrade our line. It would be Becton, Ben Rowan, and Lewis would battle it out. Then it would be McGovern, Warford, and Fant. I think that's above average. That's an above average O-line. That's unbelievable. So by cutting Brian Winters for $7.5 million, you sign Warford for $8 million. Boom, that's a Pro Bowl guy right there. You take another $8 million, you give it to Logan Ryan. That's $16 million altogether. And then you take, a couple million, give it to maybe Marcus Golden he was former Giant, or maybe Everson Griffin, or one of those guys, and that solves most of our issues. Yeah, and maybe like a Demarius Thomas or whatever it is. That's not really needed. I think a Warford and Logan Ryan, preferably Warford, those guys need to be signed ASAP. And if those guys are signed, we have a good shot this year. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of your points that you just made. I think you hit the nail on the head, to be honest with you. Larry Warford makes just too much sense for this team, especially when you can cut Brian Winters, and that'll pay for, what, 90% of his AAV for this year? The guy's a three-time Pro Bowler. They don't just, grow on trees, three-time Pro Bowlers, man. Get him. Get him in here. Let's pay him. Give him a 3-year deal. Give him a 4-year deal at $8 to $10 million a year. I'm all for it. The guy's in the prime of his career. It makes too much sense, and you can move on from a guy like Brian Winters, who had a down year, has had a couple of bad years back to back. Yes, he was hurt. I feel bad. I don't. You don't wish injury on anyone, but when you can upgrade, you got to do it. And that would be a huge upgrade. Logan Ryan, I agree with you. I think it'd be nice to add him. I don't see him as a necessity, like kind of what you said. I would love to bring in Everson Griffin. I would take a swing on him for the edge. And Demaryius Thomas, I would bet money that Demaryius Thomas is back as a Jet this year on the cheap, to be their fourth receiver. But I think that makes a ton of sense. Speaking of receivers, next question's from Sam in New Jersey, and he wants to talk a little bit about the New York Jets wide receivers.
Hey Matt, it's Sam from New Jersey. I was gonna ask you a question about the receiving core for the Jets going into the 2020 season. The way I look at it, and I've sort of been gaining this view on it, is that, like, what else are we going to do? Like, who else are we going to sign? Because this receiving core doesn't look like it could be competent. Your only real proven guy is Jamison Crowder, and I get that, Gase likes to run the slot plays, but, I feel like there's got to be another move. So I was wondering if you think that potentially this off season, until the season starts, we could be signing another guy, or potentially even making a trade. Like, I won't get into the Jamal Adams trade scenarios that could potentially happen, but yeah, I mainly just wanted to know your thoughts on, like, if there are any other moves we could make or what those would look like. Thanks.
Absolutely. I definitely think the Jets need another body in here at the wide receiver position. Like we just mentioned, Demaryius Thomas, I wouldn't be shocked if he's back. But if you wanted to trade, I'll give you 3 guys potentially that I would look for. So the Carolina Panthers have very little cap space, and it's pretty clear that they are going to be looking to rebuild under Matt Rule, right? So Curtis Samuel's name is someone who's come up a bunch. I think that makes a ton of sense. I really do. He's on his final year of his rookie deal. He's still a young guy. I would definitely look to bring him in. I know his numbers haven't been phenomenal, but I think he is definitely someone who could improve this room and give you another, NFL quality receiver in there. I don't think he's your prototypical number one. I don't know if you necessarily need to have one. I think if you can get by with 3 or 4, pretty good to good wide receivers, and adding Samuel in here, I think would be an upgrade. So I'd be for it. Next is Robert Woods. The Rams have like $500,000 to cap space. They have no cap space whatsoever. And they could save some money if they moved Robert Woods. I believe they'd save $7 million if they did it. It would cost them about the $1 million of dead cap space. And then I believe it's $7 million that they would be able to free up for trading Robert Woods. And he's someone who I think is very underrated. I don't think that he is properly rated. I think he's a really good player. And I think he could work in this offense. I like Robert Woods a lot. So that would be a name I'd look at. And then the Jaguars, who I just think they're a rebuilding team. So, maybe they would look to acquire some, future draft capital for their rebuild. And I would look at Chris Conley. I don't think they trade G.J. Shark because he's still on the younger side. I think he's a couple of years younger than Conley. But Conley had like 700 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns last year. That's not bad again, you're just getting as many bodies in here who can be productive NFL receivers. those are three guys that I definitely would take a look at. Last but certainly not least is Travis from Ohio, and he wants to talk about floor versus ceiling.
Hey, Matt. It's Travis from Ohio. Hey, buddy. I hope you're healthy. And I was looking at our schedule, and I think that our floor is 5 wins and our ceiling is 11. Want to know your thoughts. And I just, during Corona the other day, watched Clerks again for the millionth time, and you remind me of Randall Graves, Jeff Anderson from Clerks, and I think that's why I love you, and also being a Jets fan. So, go Jets, love you, stay healthy, and later.
Thank you so much, Travis. Really appreciate it. I'm gonna have to look that up. I don't know who that character is, so I'm gonna have to look him up and see. Maybe it is a good fit. As for the floor versus the ceiling, I think you're probably floor. I'll say you're not far off with 5 wins. I think I'd go 6-10 as the floor. Ceiling, I think you're a little high at 11. I would say maybe 9. I think you're somewhere between 6 and 9 wins this year. I think more likely 7 and 9 or 8 and 8. I just don't think, because it's a very difficult schedule, and you could be improved on paper, which I fully believe the Jets roster is much better this year than what it was last year. And if you can if guys can stay healthy, that would be, phenomenal. But I'm just not sure with how the schedule is, if their win total is going to change all that much from 7 and 9 last year. And I really hope it does. I hope this is a team that goes 10-6 and could push for the playoffs. That'd be a lot of fun. I just don't think I would bet on that happening with this schedule. The AFC West rather. They have to play the AFC and NFC West. And both divisions are extremely tough. In the NFC West, all 4 of those teams could be pretty solid this year. Like Seattle and San Francisco, we know one of the teams was in the Super Bowl. The other one's, a top team every year. So that's tough right off the jump. Then you also have the Rams, who were in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. Yes, they had a down year last year, but Sean McVay's a phenomenal coach and an offensive mind. You have to go on the road on the West Coast. That's not an easy game. And then Arizona, that's not an easy. I know they're coming from the West to play on the East Coast and early. I get it. I really do. The Cardinals are going to be a very good team this year. They're going to push all 4 of those teams. I don't think any of those teams finish under 500. Maybe at worst, someone comes in 4th at 7 and 9. I like Cliff Kingsbury. I like Kyler Murray. I think they're going to do big things this year. They had a great draft. It's not an easy schedule. AFC West Super Bowl champs, Kansas City Chiefs. That's not easy. Denver comes here for, I think, is it either a Monday night or a Thursday night game? It's a primetime game. I know that for sure. And, it's difficult. That's not an easy matchup, man. They had a good draft. Drew Lock looked really good last year. He could take a step forward in year 2. It's a tough schedule. It really is. But, I think we're looking at floor about 5 or 6 wins. I'll say 6 for the floor, ceiling 9. I'd be very surprised if they finish with more than 9 wins, double-digit wins this year. Hopefully they do. That'd be a lot of fun if they do. But that's going to do it this week. Thank you so much for tuning in to Just Jets. Once again, thank you so much. I'm Matt O'Leary. I'll talk to you next time.